If you've ever felt like literally everyone else received some secret handbook on how to effortlessly build friendships while you were just left completely in the dark, well, you're absolutely going to want to pay close attention to this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking some incredibly fascinating and frankly kind of brutal psychology truths. We're going to look at the hidden mechanics behind something that affects so many brilliant people, that silent, invisible struggle to make friends. And look, this isn't just about being socially awkward, it's about the heavy, often totally unacknowledged price of having a highly analytical brain. We're going to explore exactly why it seems like the sharper your mind gets, the smaller your circle becomes, and why, believe it or not, that might actually be exactly how it's supposed to be. Okay, let's dive right in. So there's this massive societal misconception out there. We all naturally assume that highly intelligent people just kind of have life figured out, right? We see someone who can solve incredibly complex problems, ace every exam, or build amazing systems, and we just assume that competence naturally translates to a thriving, effortless social life. But psychology reveals a totally different, much more painful reality. A brilliant mind very often comes with profound social isolation. Honestly, you can be the smartest person in the entire office and still end up eating lunch completely alone in your car. Because the inability to make friends for highly intelligent individuals, it's rarely just a lack of basic social skills. It's actually the direct result of a mind that simply cannot turn off its awareness, paired with this deep, unwavering refusal to fake human connection. And that brings us perfectly to our first major psychological mechanism, the trap of self-awareness, or overthinking the social game. So what is hyper-self-awareness? Basically, it's a psychological trait where your brain is constantly intensely monitoring how others might be perceiving you. People who struggle to build friendships often overthink every single social interaction, operating at this level of intensity that is, quite frankly, completely exhausting. I mean, you definitely know the feeling, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., replaying some quick 5-minute conversation from earlier that day, obsessively dissecting a specific word you used, and just agonizing over how you came across. You start wondering, did I sound arrogant? Was I too quiet? Wait, did they take my joke the wrong way? Because your brain is so unbelievably busy analyzing everyone around you and constantly auditing your own output, you literally can't just exist. You can never fully relax, let your guard down, and actually bond with the person in front of you. The way this hyper-awareness actually plays out in real life is essentially the silent, kind of tragic waiting game. Just imagine standing at the edge of a conversation at a networking event or a crowded party. First, instead of just naturally joining the group, you stand to the side, waiting for a definitive, undeniable sign that it's safe to exist in that space. Then, step 2 kicks in. You internalize this belief that, hey, if they actually wanted me here, they would come get me. By step 3, when no one actively breaks away from the group to invite you in, mostly because they're just casually chatting and simply not paying attention, your highly analytical brain falsely confirms that you don't belong. And finally, the really tragic conclusion, you preemptively reject yourself before anyone else even has a chance to accept you. You walk away totally convinced you were unwanted, when in reality, you just never gave them a chance. Now, this hyper-awareness doesn't just affect how you see yourself. It dramatically changes how you view everybody else. Enter the inauthenticity filter. You see, highly intelligent individuals operate with incredibly high social perception. Your brain basically acts as a high-powered pattern machine. You spot fake behavior instantly. You can immediately pick out that forced, overly loud laugh at a terrible joke from all the way across the room. You can effortlessly identify the underlying motives in some attention-seeking story, and you automatically zero in on that massive gap between what someone says they value and what they actually do. You're reading the micro-expressions, the subtle tone shifts, the unspoken hierarchies of the room. But here's the dark side of this specific gift. Once you see the truth behind people's behavior, once you realize just how much of daily socializing is a scripted performance, there's no going back. You absolutely cannot unsee it. And because you see through the acts so clearly, you just stop playing along. You completely refuse to fake interest, you won't flatter people just to grease the social wheels, and you certainly aren't going to pretend to be impressed by shallow bragging. But this fierce independence comes with a deeply isolating consequence. In a social world that is so heavily built on small talk, polite fictions, and surface-level validation, your realness actually makes other people deeply uncomfortable. Your authenticity unintentionally holds up a mirror to their performance. Because you refuse to play the standard social game, people very often misinterpret your independence as pride. Your quiet observation is mistaken for arrogance. So they pull away from you, not because you lack social skills, but because your sheer authenticity actually exposes their act. So, what actually happens when an intelligent person does try to bridge the gap and just join the crowd? Well, it leads to the exhaustion of social masking and the incredibly heavy price of fitting in. Masking is essentially the act of intentionally shrinking your thoughts down to a size that other people can comfortably hold, purely to avoid being perceived as too much, too intense, or too odd. When brilliant people try to fit into average social circles, they end up doing these profound mental gymnastics. You're constantly managing yourself, dumbing down your vocabulary, holding back your actual opinions because you know it'll completely kill the lighthearted mood, heavily monitoring your tone of voice, and just presenting this highly edited, super diluted version of yourself just so you can be part of the group. And the physical and mental toll this takes? It's immense. You can go to a party, successfully blend in for 3 hours, and then literally need 3 business days in a dark room just to recover your energy. I want you to really let this thought sink in for a second. Psychologists point out that this is the absolute cruelest twist of masking. Being loved for a performance is just a more sophisticated way of being completely alone. When someone really likes the mask you've put on, it doesn't actually feel like a connection. It feels like a near miss. Deep down, your brilliant mind knows they don't actually know the real you. They just like the palatable, easygoing act you put on for them. If you've ever felt this, you know exactly what I mean. Realizing that you are completely isolated, even when a room full of people is cheering for your performance, is just an absolute emotional gut punch. And this naturally brings us to a core conflict between the precise mind and everyday life, craving depth and high individualism. It's this unrelenting hunger for truth. We're looking at a stark contrast here. It's essentially two entirely different worlds colliding. A lot of intelligent people possess a psychological trait called high individualism. While normal social circles run so smoothly on following current trends, blind acceptance of the status quo, laughing at basic jokes, and endlessly discussing superficial small talk like the weather or generic weekend plans, the intelligent mind operates completely differently. You naturally question the social rules everyone else just blindly accepts. When everyone nods and agrees with a popular opinion, you're the one pulling it apart, asking why. You have this constant gnawing hunger for deep, meaningful conversations about philosophy, psychology, systemic problems, abstract ideas. You really don't want to talk about what happened on reality TV. You want to talk about why we exist in the first place. So what's the result of that relentless hunger for depth? Well, most highly intelligent people didn't lose their friends overnight. They lost them gradually, over years. As your mind grew more self-aware and honestly far too precise for a social world that relies heavily on emotional noise and polite chatter, the gap just widened. And this leaves you experiencing what's called profound intellectual loneliness. It's that haunting feeling of being at a crowded dinner party surrounded by 50 people talking loudly and feeling utterly, completely invisible. You're right there in the middle of the room, but your mind is thousands of miles away, entirely unseen by anyone around you. But hey, it's time to reframe this isolation. We need to shift this narrative from a perceived weakness into a profound strength. Let's talk about embracing your intellectual solitude. The absolutely crucial, hard truth you need to take away from this entire explainer is this. Not having a massive circle of friends doesn't mean you're broken. It simply means your mind values truth far more than it values belonging. The goal of understanding your own psychology isn't to force yourself to dilute your personality. It is not to put that exhausting mask back on and drain your energy just to fit into a room full of people you don't even really like. The real goal is to learn how to stand alone, comfortably and confidently, preserving your energy for the right connections. You hold your ground until you find those incredibly rare people who can actually match your mind and appreciate your completely unfiltered authenticity. I want to end this explainer with a question for you to really chew on. Are you willing to embrace the depth of your own mind, even if it means walking alone for a while? Remember, we rely on raw psychology here to expose the truth, not superficial motivation. If these concepts finally gave words to a heavy, invisible feeling you've carried around for years, please remember that you are never as alone as your overthinking mind tells you. There is profound proof of shared experience right here in this raw psychology. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the fascinating, brilliant solitude of the sharp mind. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will absolutely see you in the next explainer.